Welcome into another edition of the Hang Time Podcast. Sekou Smith here in Atlanta. My main man, John Schuman's in New Jersey. John Harps is behind the glass. The final weekend of the NBA regular season is in our rear view, Shu. Playoffs are up next. Game ones start Saturday. But we have a little bit of business to handle before then. Little soul clap for the Orlando Magic and Brooklyn Nets, punching their tickets to the postseason. The Magic for the first time since Dwight Howard wore a Magic uniform, which is staggering. The Nets, after a wild and crazy regular season that's not quite done yet, but certainly has had some interesting and riveting moments. Still three teams fighting it out at the bottom of the East standings. The Western Conference crew is set. It's just a matter of jockeying for position. I know you are a keen watcher of all things, Shu, but certainly the Nets, your former home state team. What does it mean for them to knock this thing out and get in? And also, what do you make of the Magic kind of coming out of nowhere, off the mat, really, and getting into the postseason?
Well, I mean, I think for Brooklyn, it's a huge step. You know, whether they made it or not, they still took a big step forward this season. But to have that sort of designation of being a playoff team, I think helps them. It gives a bunch of guys on that team playoff experience. I mean, there's hardly anybody with playoff experience in their rotation. There's DeMarre Carroll, Jared Dudley, Ed Davis, but that's about it. You know, it'll be the first playoffs for D'Angelo Russell, Spencer Dinwiddie. I think maybe Spencer Dinwiddie may have played a handful of minutes in a postseason before. Mm-hmm. But for Russell, for LeVert, for Jared Allen, for Kurucs, you know, all these guys. Joe Harris played a handful of minutes with the Cavs in the postseason before, but really hasn't played rotation minutes in the postseason. I mean, it's huge for that team.
What does it mean more for the team, Shu? What does it mean for the organization?
For both the Nets and the Clippers, you know, teams that weren't necessarily picked to make the playoffs and sort of had their eye on this summer. I think it's part of their package that they're trying to sell free agents this summer. You know, the Nets can say, hey, you know, we're a playoff team, while the Knicks were the worst team in the league. The Clippers can say, hey, we're a playoff team, and the Lakers weren't, even though they had LeBron James. And I think that means a lot. I think, you know, people respect winning more than anything. You know, we'll see how much it plays a part, but it certainly helps.
So you think the free agent pitch in both places is you can come to this area and play for a winner, or you can play for a loser? Then it's going to be like come play with us or go hang with the losers.
Yeah, I think so. And it's also about, you know, just establishing culture and habits and, you know, like a winning atmosphere. Whereas if you go to New York, you're obviously starting from scratch. They have basically, you know, they haven't really established anything in David Fizdale's first year there. You know, they have a bunch of rookies that showed some flash of promise, but nothing substantial. And obviously they had the worst record in the league. And then Clippers versus Lakers. Yeah, I think there's a better culture in Clippers land right now than there is with the Lakers. You know, Lakers were sort of a mess culture wise this year. And obviously LeBron James has appeal, but if you're talking about the whole package, I like the team that made the postseason and has some young players and a lot of really good role players in place.
I think culturally is the thing that strikes me. I remember going to Orlando and covering playoff games when Dwight was there, and the Magic had a following. Like, they had people in Central Florida, whether it was just because of Dwight or whatever, but it was an event. It was a big deal to show up to their arena to watch that team as kind of the showcase team in Central Florida. There's not another professional sports entity that can make as big a footprint as the Magic can in the Orlando area. And when they are out of the mix for as long as they've been, it's easy to forget how robust a following they had as recently as 6 years ago. Them getting back in with Steve Clifford guiding them, to me, is huge for the Magic brand in Central Florida, as much in their home market as it is anywhere, because it reestablishes them as a viable playoff team in the East for potentially as long as they want to compete at that level because of the wide open nature of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like the Magic is pretty amazing when you consider where they were at the end of January. So on the morning of January 31st, they were 20-31. That was a week before the trade deadline, and they were in 11th place in the East, behind Washington, behind Charlotte, Miami. The day of the deadline, they were still 5 games in the loss column behind the 8th place Heat at the time. And at that point, you thought, it's an opportunity for them to sell off Vucevic and or Terrence Ross, with those guys both on expiring contracts, and seeing maybe if they can get some more assets. And obviously they held on to both of them. The only player they really traded was Jonathan Simmons, who was frankly horrible for them this year. And they thought they could make the playoffs. And heck, they were right. They have, since that January 31st, they have the East's second best record, 21-9, and the league's best defense since that January 31st mark.
I call that the Steve Clifford effect.
Yeah.
He's done this before.
Yeah, they rank as the third best, most improved team overall as far as point differential per 100 possessions from last season. It's not quite the improvement that Clifford's Bobcats made in his first season in Charlotte, but it's significant. And one thing sneaky about the Magic is they are 8-6, including 4-4 on the road, against the top 4 teams in the East. They're not one of these teams that just sort of beat up on the teams below them in the standings. They have some good wins over these top 4 teams in the East, and obviously they'll be playing one of them come Saturday or Sunday. So they might be like the one little bit of a threat in that 5 to 8 range in the Eastern Conference.
You mentioned the top 4 in the East, Shu. We got a chance to see a powerhouse matchup after our last show. Last Thursday on TNT, Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks went head up with the Sixers and Joel Embiid. And it was big-time matchup, big-time showcase game for both those teams, both those stars, both those guys who are involved in the MVP race. Giannis took control late. The Bucks won 128-122. And I thought Giannis, with his 45 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, and he had one just ridiculous block on Embiid late to kind of thwart a layup. I thought it was a statement game, and it turned into a statement performance for Giannis. I don't know that he needed it to lock up the MVP, because I don't know if that's the case. We'll see what the voting does. I've noticed that guys are pretty split, the people who are voting that I've talked to, in terms of who they're going to vote for between Giannis and James Harden. But for you, did that game, that performance by Giannis, did it do anything in regards to his MVP candidacy for you?
Probably maybe gave me a half of a degree more certainty of who I'm selecting, but not really. Maybe it affected my Defensive Player of the Year vote, because he and Embiid also are 2 of the sort of 4 candidates, and we discussed this last week, for my Defensive Player of the Year ballot. He didn't just have that one block on Embiid. He had 4 blocks on Embiid that night. And that's, the Bucks are the number 1 defensive team in the league. That's where they've improved more from last season. I said it, he could be on 3 ballots for me: MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Most Improved. And like for the Sixers, Jimmy Butler didn't play that night. In each of the last 5 games, they've missed Butler and or Embiid. And so they're still stuck on 10 games for the number of games that their starting lineup has played together.
Right.
And I don't know what's the plan for Tuesday and Wednesday. They play at Miami on Tuesday. They play Chicago on Wednesday. Obviously, the Sixers are in and locked in to the 3 seed. They still don't know if they're playing. I think they're only options are Brooklyn or Orlando as a possible opponent, but they're fascinating. They're just fascinating to me because that starting lineup has played only 10 games together, because they have depth issues, because they've gone all in on this team when they were, I keep saying this, but they were 25-25 just 14 months ago,
right,
and tied for 8th place in the East. And, because of the fit issues with Simmons and Embiid, they are the most I'm glad I'll be covering them from start to finish in the postseason, because they are the most fascinating team to me over the next could be 2 weeks, could be 4 weeks, could be 2 months. Who knows? I can't wait to see what happens with this team, just because of the way they've come together and sort of the personalities involved, the players involved. it should be fun to watch.
Is there a matchup for them that excites you more than others outside of Boston now? Like I know they've developed a rivalry with Boston, but I would kind of like to see them in the Bucks. I like that Embiid and Giannis are willing to go at each other the way they do.
Well, I mean, they're going to face Toronto. Assuming both Philadelphia and Toronto advance, it'll be Raptors Sixers in the second round, with Toronto having home court.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great matchup too. Like, there's nothing wrong with that one either. Like, there's nothing, Embiid versus Gasol, Simmons versus Kawhi Leonard,
Jimmy Butler and Kawhi matching up.
Siakam in there. It should be. That would be an awesome. Like, I really cannot wait for the Eastern Conference semifinals. And though Boston is a little bit banged up, suffered a couple of injuries on Sunday, I feel pretty safe in picking them over Indiana, just because Indiana has continued to sort of struggle against good teams. Without Victor Oladipo. They hung on to that 3 seed for a while, mostly because they were taking care of business against bad teams. And once their schedule got tough, they really started to fade a bit. And obviously the Celtics beat them twice in the last couple of weeks. So I like that matchup for Boston, and I feel pretty confident in thinking that we're going to get Bucks, Celtics, Raptors, Sixers, and who knows what happens after that.
Yeah. Your Week 25 power rankings are out on NBA.com, Shu. How many weeks do you do every season? Is this the final one? So you got one more? This is it?
No, this is it.
This is it.
This is it.
26 then. Okay,
this is Week 26. Yeah.
Top 5 teams on the Week 26 power rankings. I'm gonna say this out loud, and I'm gonna ask you a question at the end, and I don't want you to give me your Schubert answer. I want you to give me your gut. Don't give me the analytics answer. Give me the gut answer.
Yeah.
Warriors, Bucks, Rockets, Raptors, and Nuggets are the top 5 teams in your Week 26 power rankings. Is that the same order in terms of which you think these teams have an opportunity to win a championship?
1, Warriors, yes. 2, Bucks, yes. Rockets versus I mean, I guess it's about their path, really. The Rockets would have to run into the Warriors. The Raptors maybe have a better chance of getting to the finals than the Rockets do. Mm-hmm. But I mean, who knows? Like, at that point, it's.
I mean, do you think the Nuggets are the team that could be 5th if we had a championship power rank? Like, who could win a title? Would you put the Nuggets 5th on your list?
No, I guess that's a good question. Maybe the Sixers or the Celtics would be in there, just because both of those teams have a high ceiling. We haven't necessarily seen them hit that ceiling yet.
Right.
And they're both coming out of the East, where, like I said, once we get to the top 4 teams, I think it's wide open. And
I know it's different.
I wouldn't be surprised with any of those 4 teams getting to the finals.
Yeah, I know it's different. I'm not contesting your top 5. I was just curious if that lined up at all. The top 5 teams in your final power rankings, if they would be considered your top 5 teams in terms of trying to win a title. Because I don't know that one has to match up with the other, like you said, because of, if you're in the East and it's wide open, and if you're in the West and you got the Warriors first and foremost, and then maybe the Rockets in your way, I have a hard time seeing what other Western Conference, like who else in the West could you envision winning at all?
Beyond the Warriors and Rockets?
Yeah. I mean, the Nuggets, we hadn't seen them in the playoffs, let alone winning multiple best-of-7 series.
Yeah. And then, Blazers are hurt.
Yeah.
The Jazz just maybe not consistency enough. Yeah. Not good enough offensively. The Clippers, no. The Spurs, no. I mean, that's...
Whereas in the East,
4 of them,
I could see anybody from the Bucks to the Celtics.
Yeah. All 4 of them.
Yeah.
The Celtics, we know they can put together a run, and if they have one opponent in front of them, for 7 games, I like them in that situation better than maybe regular season games or a series of regular season games against other random opponents. And it's good that Gordon Hayward is starting to find himself.
He's cooking, yeah.
Right now. He had a great game against Indiana, another solid game on Sunday against Orlando. And that's great. You know, we got to see what the deal is with Marcus Smart's injury, Jason Tatum's injury. Both of them couldn't finish that game in Orlando or against Orlando on Sunday. So maybe they're going into the postseason again, shorthanded, but I don't think either of those two injuries are too serious.
Brad Stevens cultivating his role off the bench. That may be the most crucial thing they've done when they look back at it, wherever their playoff fortunes take them, that they might look back and say, wow, if we hadn't figured out that role for Gordon Hayward, maybe we don't get to the conference finals, or maybe we don't get, wherever we end up. In the West, the Rockets are a half game behind Denver for second place. How much does the Rockets potentially moving into 2 change the complexion of the Western Conference playoffs for you?
I would say not much. But I still think what the Nuggets did on Sunday was weird. They were playing Portland for the second time in a few days. And I guess the idea was that if Portland won, Portland could possibly move up into third and push the Rockets into fourth, where the Nuggets wouldn't have to face the Rockets in the second round. Because the Rockets have not, or the Nuggets have not been good against the Rockets this year. And so Denver didn't play Jamal Murray, Paul Millsap, and Nikola Jokic. And then
what were they doing? I mean, what are you doing, by the way, if you're Denver?
It's one thing to rest guys, but then come the fourth quarter, it was a close game. And their other two starters, the two starters that played, Gary Harris and Will Barton, did not play at all in the fourth quarter. Monty Morris, their next best guard, did not play in the fourth quarter. The Nuggets had a 7-point lead earlier, midway through the fourth, and lost. It was really weird because, number one, their own loss now pushes them closer to the Rockets and gives the Rockets a chance to pass the Nuggets for second. And then, therefore, they may have just given up home court advantage in the second round. And two, I don't get why this team, given its playoff inexperience, is trying to clear its path for the second round. Like, just worry about
getting in
and beating whoever's in front of you. I mean, the Rockets, the Nuggets have, I think, only 3 of their 9 rotation guys have playoff experience: Millsap, Plumlee, and Barton. The Nuggets have won 2 playoff series in the last 25 years. I'll say that again. The Nuggets have won 2 playoff series in the last 25 years.
Good. Great. Are you serious?
Yeah. And so, why are they? I didn't get that at all. Those were
the same season, weren't they?
Yes. Yeah. It was 2009, correct? Right.
Yeah. They went play the Lakers in the. Oh wow. Just 20, man.
But I mean, obviously, this team has nothing to do with the Nuggets of 20 years ago.
I just didn't realize it.
But it's just a weird, it's playing with fire, and it's messing with the basketball gods or whatever, if you want to believe in that kind of stuff. It just, it was just a little funky. I didn't like it at all. And so we'll see what happens from here and where they land and who's their first round opponent. But
I think people get way too caught up in who you're trying to match. Get in the playoffs.
Any of these teams in the West has the ability to win at least a round.
Yeah.
And so any team that the Nuggets play in the first round is no easy out. And I will say this, also a little stat for you. There has been a upset in the first round, meaning a team without home court advantage has won a series in the first round in each of the last 12 years. So in each of the last 12 years, there's been at least one.
Somebody's got
at least one team with home court advantage that loses a first round series. And there's been, and in those 12 years, there's been 23 of them. 14 have been 4-5 series, but 9 have been, 3-6 or 2-7 or 1-8. So somebody, history tells us that somebody's going to get upset in this first round. And so, we'll see. And I think the East, it would be really tough to believe that the East, barring an injury somewhere, that there's an upset in the East. So we'll see.
I'll tell you where I don't expect to see an upset. And that's if they get in it all. Excuse me, get in it all. And that's the Detroit Pistons. The bottom is falling out. 4 straight losses, Shoe. They can still fall out of the playoffs. Grizzlies Tuesday, Knicks on Wednesday. How brutal is it if they fall all the way out?
It's like they were as recently as a week ago, they were looking strong to be the 6th seed just because of the schedule that Brooklyn had, Orlando's sort of flakiness and their own schedule, but they've lost 4 straight. Blake Griffin has been banged up. He came back. He scored 45 points in Oklahoma City, but their defense wasn't good enough. And then he looked hobbled on Sunday against Charlotte. If they won that, they're in. Now, because they lost to Charlotte in particular, the Pistons need to win both of their games or win one and have Charlotte lose one of their 2. So basically, with 4 games left that the Pistons have to play and the Hornets have to play, the Pistons need 2 of those 4 results to go their way, either wins or Charlotte losses. And so they can still take care of business. They control their own destiny, but they've put themselves in a precarious position.
With their best player walking around, on a knee that might not be sound. So
yeah. It's wild. As much as I want to fast forward to the Eastern Conference semifinals, I'm sort of interested to see, and that Charlotte win kept Dwayne Wade and the Heat alive, even though those guys have lost a few games in a row too.
That's the other one. Friday night we were on NBA TV. Caron Butler and I were talking about D Wade and just the fact that, man, you wanted to see him go out. You want to see him go out in a playoff series. I don't want his last hurrah to have been this end stretch of the regular season where some of his teammates, by the way, I didn't want to call out names. Caron didn't care. He called out names. Were making plays that were less than inspiring with games on the line. Dion Waiters had a couple of plays, Shoe. A bad 3, a half-hearted closeout on a contest, to contest a 3. It was just like, Caron was like, man, he's like, when Dwayne Wade makes a great play Friday night, steal and layup late to keep them in the game. He was like, you can't have guys making lackadaisical plays like that when D Wade's out there fighting for his playoff life, and his last season in the league. And, Caron was like, I would have went in the locker room and said something. He's like, I'd have gone in the locker room and screamed on somebody,
Well, Wade missed the potential game winner in Minnesota on Friday. That was the game you were watching.
Yes.
And then the sort of execution down the stretch in Toronto on Sunday
had another snafu.
Too. I'm going to give you a fun number. Last year, the Heat were number 1 in clutch 3-point percentage.
Mm-hmm.
This year, the Heat are number 30 in clutch 3-point percentage. I'm going to give you some numbers of the Heat players who have attempted it more than 6 clutch 3-pointers.
You've been hanging out with Paul Pierce?
All right. Goran Dragic, 1 for 9.
Mm-hmm.
Justice Winslow, 1 for 12. He's a clutch 3-pointers, so 3-pointers with the score within 5 in the last 5 minutes of the fourth or OT.
Mm-hmm.
So Dragic, 1 for 9. Winslow, 1 for 12. Dion Waiters, 1 for 18. Josh Richardson, 8 for 22, the only decent one.
Right.
And Dwayne Wade, 5 for 26, which is 19%.
Right.
And one of those 5 is the crazy one he hit against the Warriors.
Yeah.
So they have just been awful shooting from 3. Waiters, like I said, is 1 for 18 from 3 on clutch threes, 2 for 24 overall on clutch shots. So 1 for 6 inside the arc. That's 2 for 24 is just
brutal,
amazingly brutal.
Like I said, I hate that Wade will potentially finish his career watching the playoffs. Like, there was an opportunity for Miami, not that they were going to scare anybody in the postseason, but at least to see him on that stage one more time would have been nice.
And it would have been fun. I guess it's still possible that their season will be on the line Wednesday in Brooklyn.
Potentially, yeah.
But it would have been fun if that was a 2-way tie for 8th place going into that game or something like that, know.
Right.
And so, we'll see. The Heat basically need everything to go their way going forward. They need Detroit to lose twice, and I think they need Charlotte to lose 1 of 2.
Right.
And then they need to win both of their games. They have a back-to-back Tuesday, Wednesday. So they basically need 5 of those 6 games to go their way in order for them to do it. So it does not look good. Obviously
that's too much wishing and hoping.
They lost 4 in a row, and their offense has just been struggling, really.
Losing Richardson the way they did too was brutal, just hurt them because, like you said, not only is he one of the rare guys who's good in the clutch when they need him, but he's also just kind of was their bellwether this year to me. With Dragic out, Wade off the bench, he was the guy who kind of set the tone for him all the time. So
yeah, they had found there was a point after the All-Star break where they found a sort of starting lineup that worked. Whiteside went to the bench after coming back from injury, but it was so fragile. And then you lose an important cog like Richardson or something like that. And then, all that rotation that was finally working just sort of falls apart at the wrong time, obviously. Well,
no games on the schedule on Monday night with the NCAA tournament title game. The wrong school from Virginia for your liking, of course, is playing.
Every time I do a double take, it says Virginia and it says Texas Tech. So I see the Virginia and I see the Tech part. I do a double take every time I see the matchup. And I'm like, wait. Oh, no, never mind. But, we're moving on.
Yeah, it's time. What are you going to do? I don't have a rooting interest at all. So I'll watch just purely as a basketball fan and spectator without any heartstrings attached.
As weird as it is to root for Virginia for me, I am rooting for Virginia because I didn't fill out a pool, but my wife filled out a pool for her office, and I told her to pick Virginia. I said, I went with the strategy, go chalk early on and then pick a different winner than everybody else. Everybody else would pick Duke, so I said pick Virginia. And if she wins, I think she gets a day off, a free, an extra day off or something like that. So
nice.
I will be a Hokie rooting for the Hoos on Monday night.
Should be interesting. Be sure to read the full NBA.com power rankings at NBA.com/power rankings. John Schuhmann's final assessment for the regular season, week 26 power rankings are up and live. Check it out. Shu will be back on Thursday with a special first round preview edition of the show, a chance to scan these first round series once they become final Wednesday night. I'm assuming it'll be when we get everything locked up. Then, like we mentioned, in the West, we know the 8 teams. We don't know the order. In the East, there's still some jockeying going on in terms of who's getting in. Should be interesting last couple of days of this NBA regular season. Make sure you tune in and watch the games Wednesday night. 3 hours of live crunch time on NBA TV. I will do my best to be perky and fired up alongside Isaiah Thomas and Jerry Greenberg. Be sure to subscribe to Hang Time on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts for new episodes all season long. And don't forget to leave a review. We're going to be rocking throughout the playoffs and the offseason, so we're going nowhere. Make sure you remember that. And we'll see you right here next time on the Hang Time Podcast. On the Hang Time Podcast.